REC. Can I let go of it, Willie?
Yeah.
Okay, Willie. Let me see. Where do you come in on the Clarence and Sylvia Mass family?
Well, actually, I'm third from the youngest. Clarence and Bobby are below me. Then John, and you, Irene, Lily, and Danny, and Lydia, who's deceased, and then the oldest. So, of the family of 9, I'm seventh.
Seventh. And can you tell me today's date?
Today's date, if I'm still in my right mind, my watch says is March the 9th, March 9th, 2009.
Okay, and your birthday is when, and how old will you be on your next birthday?
Well, my birthday was July 2nd, 1940, and this year, July 2nd, I'll be 69.
69, okay. So, be careful there.
Yeah. Now, the next thing is, what are my earliest memories?
Right, I'd like to know what you know about Mom and Dad. Maybe you remember it different than what I do.
Yeah, I will. Actually, Mom and Dad, when I first was aware of their existence, was when I was Amish. And the first thing that I remember in my life that I know of was when Dan Mast's first wife, Anna died. And I was at her funeral, and I was looking into a dark, deep hole, and various people, I was past one person to the other, and they would hold me over the grave, and I would look way down there. And of course, the Amish buried people, literally, after they died.
Yeah, they did.
And then they put boards over the coffin, and then put dirt over the boards. So I was there looking down that deep hole and not knowing what I was looking at, but they all wanted me to have a peek. And so she died in 1943, so I was 3 years old. That was my earliest memory. And the next thing that I remember when I was very young was having my hair washed. And I remember that I was held back, and I had hair down to my shoulders, and it would be back in a bowl, basin of warm water. And I'd be crying, screaming, they'd be washing my hair. And
Remember if you had straight, curly,
I had long
dark?
hair. I had long hair. I think it was like down to my shoulders, but that isn't a very clear memory. I was very young then. And the other thing I remember is we were living on the Henry Troyer farm, and I was 5 years old, and I just gotten a card from Aunt Fanny. And we loved Fanny because Aunt Fanny, that was before she was married, Fanny Mast, would read stories to her. We were very fond of her. And she sent me a birthday card. I was 5 years old, and I went down the mailbox, got the card out, and I ran all the way home yelling, "Hey, have a card from the Fanny."
Oh, yeah.
So that was a very, very special event for me. And then about the next thing I remember about my dad was
I'll give him this for a starter.
when we were, I think we were still on the Troyer place. My dad had left the Amish, and I watched him cut off his beard. And I very well remember this. Dad was there with the scissors cutting his beard off. And after he finished, it didn't look the same as before. So that was a very striking memory for me. And
I'm getting a lot of help on
you're
this.
getting a lot of help here.
Yeah.
Well, that's all right.
It is We'll see.
I will cover every last question.
Okay.
But anyhow, I was there and enjoying all the things of going to the Amish church. I remember going to the Amish church, and we had bean soup, and we would have the soup sitting in the middle of the table, and we would all be taking our spoons and eating the bean soup, and it would dribble all the way to your mouth. And then I saw those old men there with beards, and the bean soup was dripping down their beards. And so that was a very, very special memory I had of going to the Amish church. And then in the Amish church, you would sit very quietly. You would sit very quietly, and the minister would preach. You were there on the bench, and you couldn't say anything for a long time. And then they knelt for a long time, and the preacher was there reading out of a prayer book, and I still remember that, reading out of a prayer book. And we'd...
Then everybody'd stand up again.
Yeah, everyone would stand up again, and we'd go through all these things. But then I was looking forward to eating. And I still remember that there were times when we didn't have bread soup or bean soup, that we would bring our lunches. And then we'd go out to the buggy, and we would eat our lunch out in the buggy. So that was my high point at church, was eating, because it was a payment sort of for being quiet for so long. So I have a lot of memories of being Amish. The other memory I have of being Amish was when we went to visit Dottie. Dottie was always friendly, and I thought he was a very distinguished gentleman. And Mommy was very, very, very nice and loving and friendly. And so
we love Mommy.
So I loved to go to Mommy and Dottie's place, and they always paid a lot of attention to me. And so in Mom and Dottie's place, I would always, go around and explore. So this one time I was exploring, I found that they had this white, it was like a drawers in it, and so I didn't know what was inside, so I took a stick and I beat on it with a stick, and lo and behold, out in between these drawers came out bees by the storm, a whole flock of bees. Before I knew it, I had bees all around me, and they were stinging me in my hair, in my clothes, and in a second I was away from that thing, threw my stick down, ran to the house screaming, "Mom, Mom, Mom, Mom," Mom in Pennsylvania Dutch, and Mommy and my mom were right there immediately taking my clothes off, and I was screaming, and I had bees all throughout my hair, and they were combing these long curls with a comb, combing out all these bees out of my hair. They had me stripped there naked in the kitchen, and all these bees were in my clothes. And I don't know how many stings I got. I must have had, 40 or 50 stings. I had a lot of stings.
That's right.
And I was so sick from those stings, I vomited on the way home.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
I remember vomiting on the way home. So that was the story of me and
the bees.
I never bothered the beehive after that.
Have to wonder if they went back in. Probably did.
Probably did, yeah. Went back into the hive after they had stung the intruder.
Now, did Mommy and Dottie live close to any of the other family at that place?
Yeah, Adam. Adam lived right door, and I like to go to Adam's place.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I like about Adam's place is that he had a number of things that we didn't have. One was a typewriter. Adam had a typewriter you could type with, so I loved to type on his typewriter, and that was something I enjoyed a lot.
Boy, he's pretty modern.
Yeah. Adam had, especially for being Amish,
Mm-hmm.
had modern things that the other Amish didn't have. Adam was quite progressive. So then, when my dad shaved off his beard, cut off his beard, we went to the Mennonites. And then, soon after that, we moved down to Greenwood.
Yeah, we did.
And I remember there in that house, we were living in a very primitive, but had a very primitive lifestyle down in Greenwood. We lived in the middle of a big woods, and I remember that when I went to first grade, I had to walk about 1.5 miles. And I didn't mind it at all. Walked down that long lane, walked down through the woods, and then walked for about another 3/4 of a mile along the highway till we got to the woods. And the thing that I remember about Greenwood was that it was in a brown schoolhouse, And Gladys King was my first grade teacher, and I really liked her. I learned a lot from her, and she used to take thistles, little burrs of thistles, and we would make animals with them.
Oh, I know what kind you mean.
Remember
Yeah,
those little
we could build on
cockleburrs?
each other. Yeah,
Cockleburrs, they would stick to each other,
Yeah.
and we would make a horse or a camel or whatever.
Mhm.
We would put these together. We thought that was great.
Yeah.
We didn't think about the fact that we didn't have toys.
No.
We would do the cockleburrs, and every class would go up front to recite. And however, the one thing I remember is the first day of school in the first grade, it was like being in a foreign country because I couldn't really speak that much English. I could just speak Pennsylvania Dutch. And Gladys King came to my mother and said, "You know, Willie doesn't seem to understand what I'm saying." She said, "Do you speak that Pennsylvania German dialect at your house?" And my mom said, "Yes." She said, "Well, I think that's the reason." And after I was halfway through first grade, she came to my mom again and said, "Willie understands much better now."
Oh, good.
So I learned English the first half of the first grade.
Okay.
And so then my second year, I had Miriam Bender as my teacher, and I had some problems in my second grade, especially with bowel habits. We had an outdoor toilet there, and I didn't make it to the toilet all the time, so I messed my pants. And so I was there, had messed my pants, and you can see it was obviously wet. So she ordered me to stand on the furnace. See, we had a grid there and the furnace underneath.
Oh, no.
Ordered me to stand on the furnace to dry out myself. And so I was there in the furnace drying out, and she didn't realize that I only had done number 2, but number 1, but number 2.
Oh, dear.
And so I began to stink, and so I was there in the furnace like that, holding my nose, and I guess everyone kind of got a kick out of that. The other thing she did is, she said, "You must be punished for doing this," and so in front of this class, Miriam took a rubber hose and she hit me, in my rear end. But the hose was long enough that double kind didn't hurt me at all. I didn't mind it at all, but I guess I was just kind of embarrassed to be having messed my pants and being whipped with a hose in front of everybody else.
I guess.
So, and then I remember Ernest Schwarzentuber was the principal, and I still remember that. And then halfway through the second grade, then we moved to Hartley.
Yeah, that's right. We
And
did.
That was December the 27th, 1947.
That's right.
That day, we had several truckloads. We put all the furniture on a truck. It was out in the open. It wasn't a closed van. Everything was out in the open. And December the 25th, I remember my mom and dad were busy with moving, and they decided that I was 6 years old at the time. They decided I was young enough I should have a Christmas present. The older ones would understand. Clarence was too young. He was only 2 years old at the time, so he didn't matter if he got one. So I was the only one in the family who got a Christmas present, and so they got me a water pistol.
Oh, my.
And so I had a water pistol, and it was good I did, because when we moved to the farm in Hartley, Delaware, the first day at school, I remember that Mrs. Williams, Sarah D. Williams, I was in the second grade, I happened to be second grade, all the children had to say what they got for Christmas. And so all these children were saying 5, 6, 7 things. And so she came around to me and she said, "Now we have a new member in our class, William. And William, what did you get for Christmas?" And luckily, I did get a water pistol. I said, "A water pistol." And she waited, and I said, "Nothing more." So I don't know if I hadn't gotten anything whether I would have lied or not. I said I had gotten nothing. But I remember everyone was waiting for me to say some other things, and everyone had 5 or 6 or 7 things they got for Christmas. And I said, "A water pistol." So I don't know what the rest of you did. Whether you were questioned or not what you got for Christmas.
No, I don't remember that.
Yeah, that you were. That you did. So it was good that my mother and father at least got me something. So.
I guess so.
But-
We won't
but-
hold it against you.
But anyhow, I was so happy in that new house because we had electricity in Greenwood. We had no electricity.
right.
We had no running water. We had a pump.
We
You had a pump. We had no refrigerator. I think we did have an ice box. And I went to this new house, and all I could do was turn switches on and off and see the bulbs light up.
Yep.
And I remember doing I turn switches on and off and say, this is really fun. Have electricity. And so we were on the farm there, and remember we had 2 horses to farm with, and then we had some cows, and I had chores. I fed the chickens and the hogs, and enjoyed doing chores. However, there were some times when I didn't realize that what I was doing wouldn't work. For instance, I knew I was going to be gone on some kind of a trip for several days, and so I gave the hogs enough feed and water, slopped them with this. I gave them enough for 3 days, and then I came back and found the mother hog was dead.
Oh.
What happened? It had gotten sour.
Okay.
And so she died. So that was a big lesson. Don't try that on animals. But I had tried to give them so I wouldn't have to slop them every day. I tried to give them a whole 3 or 4 days at one time.
Okay. Well, live and learn.
Live and learn, right?
Okay.
And
So, do you remember what kind of work Dad was doing at that time?
yeah, Dad was in milking cows and farming the fields, and I was learning bit by bit. I remember when I was about 8 years old, he put me on a tractor and put the tractor in gear. I hadn't ridden a tractor before, but he was teaching me, and I put that tractor in gear, and it started off much faster than I thought it would start. And there was a wagon ahead of me, and I turned the tractor as quickly as I could, but not fast enough, and it ran right over the wagon, just bent the whole wagon in like a V. And Dad was laughing all the time. He didn't even punish me for hitting the wagon. But I soon learned that you had to be careful with, starting off slow and things like that.
Okay.
But I spent long days in the fields, sometimes 4 or 5 hours, and I just love it in the fields all by myself. And I would sing all the church songs and everything like that, and everything else in the field. Just loved it there. And in the sawmill, we would go logging
Okay.
with Dad, and he had the sawmill, and we would take chains and pull the logs on the truck. And so it's a wonder we must have had angels working overtime. It's a wonder we weren't killed, because every once in a while the chain would break or some of the logs would all go off the truck. And fortunately, thank God, we were not in the way of the logs.
That's right.
We would have. And he did get a hoist then, a tackle and a hoist to put the logs up. And we worked on the sawmill. I remember Dad always used to figure up all of the cost in his head. He used to do all the arithmetic in his head and never realized how astute he was mathematically. But I must have gotten some of his genes because I love math. And Dad always figured up in his head. Then when he would go to the customer, he would always knock off a little bit. And
Right. So,
you could see that Dad would like the smile on the customer's face, the satisfaction that he had gotten a discount
right.
on the lumber. So even now, when I love to give people discounts on various things, see their reaction. I think I probably have that gene from Dad or something.
I do too.
Yeah. So, or it's something that you learn unconsciously.
I guess so.
But anyhow, we had a great time there on the farm, harvesting, and we would thresh wheat. And Dad had a threshing cycle, and we would go 14, 15, 16 farms during the summer. And I would sit on the tractor and watch the belt, and I would go on Dad over through the cycle, and I really enjoyed that, going from farm to farm. And then when dinner came, we went in the house and we all ate lunch there in the house.
Was the lunch familiar food?
Oh, familiar food, right. It was a little bit different than Mom because she cooked traditional Amish, but the farm, I loved the food. Whatever they ate, I ate, and so that was a lot of pleasure doing his threshing cycle.
Absolutely.
With the thresh machine. And going to Hartley School was another adventure. Mrs. Williams I had for half a second in third grade, and then went to Ms. Massey. And Mrs. Massey took a special liking to me. I don't know why. I think she was Webb's daughter, and Webb was the landlord for my dad down Little Red House. So she probably remembered this. She seemed to even be a little partial toward me, but I really soaked up all the attention. I never worked in school that much till I got to Ms. Massey's room, and made all A's but one B the first time, and after that made straight A's. I think for the next 2 years. My dad, when he saw my report card with these straight A's in it, he looked at the report card and looked at me and said, "Willie," see, Dad never complimented me on anything, but he said, "Willie, you know, this is a good report card. I think when you grow up, you're going to be a doctor." And that was my first inkling toward medicine, was when my dad said that when I was in the 4th grade. And
how about that?
So I went to Mrs. Massey and gave her my report card and said, "Mrs. Massey, when I grow up, I'm going to be a doctor." And she looked at me and smiled. Said, "Yes, that's good. That's good, Willie. That's to be something very good for you to aim at."
So there was your encouragement,
there
right?
was my encouragement there. And then when Mom heard about it, Mom said, no, that's too high. That's too high. You might make a dentist. You might be a dentist." So then I think it was Irene, I think it was you that says, "Well, you know, he sings a lot and he loves music. Maybe he'll be a singing dentist." And so after that, for a period of time, they called me the singing dentist.
Yeah, I remember that.
Remember that?
Yeah,
singing
I do.
Dentist? Yeah.
Yeah, I remember you enjoyed music and singing.
Yeah, I enjoyed music and singing. Still do. As far as musical instruments, I've played the mandolin for a while.
Oh, yeah.
And then a little bit of guitar. And then when I was in medical school, my last year, I learned to play the violin. And then when I was out in practice in Hartley, I took a year and a half of organ lessons.
Oh, yeah.
So I've had my little thing in all sorts of musical instruments, but I was so busy with my medical practice, I could never get the time to really practice and get these things in tune. So anyhow, Mrs. Massey, she really taught me a lot, gave me a lot of incentive to learn, and it's during that time that I played Hansel and the Hansel and Gretel thing.
Oh,
as a
yeah.
school play. And so I enjoyed playing Hansel, and
Did they ever show movies in school for you?
Yeah, they showed movies in school, and I couldn't go, so I was out with the Amish people, and Irene Miller was one of the ones that I was out with.
That's right.
And she married Chris Zook later on. But some of the movies I did see. There were a couple of movies about banana picking and manufacturing, things like that I saw the rest of the people. But some of the other movies then I didn't see. And I don't know what the distinction was between the two. But then I went on to 6th grade, Mrs. Butts, And Mrs. Butts was fine, although she had this big thing on her face, on her cheek there, which I thought was disfiguring, and I was always very much aware of that when she was teaching. And then from the 6th grade I went to 7th grade. There was a gentleman there, can't think of his name.
Holland.
Not Mr. Holland.
Oh, another gentleman.
Another one. I think it was like Mr. Thompson or, and he was a young fellow, very quiet, and the children just ran over him. There was no order in the class or anything. He was new, it was his first year. And I pitied him because they just ran over him. They were had a wild bunch there that year. But when I got to the 8th grade, there was order because Mr. Holland.
I'm sure there was.
Mr. Holland had exquisite order in the class, and I was there in his class, had heard about him before, and then learned all of his poems. He had like a poem a month to learn. You had to recite in front of the class.
Oh, yeah.
And we were just reciting some of his poems, Annabelle Lee and the sky, that brief December day, and the Nautilus, Chambered Nautilus, and all these great poems were learned. And then he also taught us how to parse
Oh, yeah.
and diagram.
On the blackboard.
On the blackboard, parsing on the blackboard. And really prepared us very well for high school. And so when we graduated from, well, I didn't graduate from the 8th grade because by that time people went on to high school, so we didn't have 8th grade graduations. So we didn't have the prize for mathematics like John got. But when I went to high school, there was the thing that my dad had all my older brothers work on the farm. And so he was expecting me to stay on the farm. Well, Mrs. Massey or some of the other teachers had gotten in with my mom in private and said, Willie is college material. Do not let him skip high school. Be sure he goes to high school. And so my mom connived. I think it was like Rebecca and Isaac. My mom connived to keep me in school. And so what happened was when school started, my mom got me ready. She got my clothes together and she got everything ready early. And I cut across the field, went to Route 8 where the bus was. And Mom didn't tell Dad anything. I was gone. I guess Dad didn't really think that much about it. I guess he was busy on the farm and other things.
Right.
And maybe Mom made some excuse for me. But I was in high school for 3 or 4 days until my dad heard about it.
Oh, yeah.
And he was a little upset about it, but I had already started. And I think Mom talked about it and told him what the teacher said. He let me go to school.
Well, I'm
And
glad.
So that was a pivotal part of my life because I was the first one of the boys. You had gone to high school, but I was the first one of the boys in our family ever to go past the 8th grade.
That's right.
And so I went 8th grade, college, medical school, and then of course Clarence, who followed after me, I paved the way for him.
That's right.
Same thing. So went to high school then, and had a great time in high school. However, before I went to the bus in the morning, I had to do chores and spend an hour or two doing chores. And after I got home, I had to spend 4 or 5 hours milking, working in the field. So while all the other high school people were in sports or various events and clubs and things like that, I was home working. But that was good for me. I mean, I learned to work early, and also it put me in this thing of I don't know whether I want to spend the rest of my life doing this.
I believe that.
So it gave me a lot of incentive, and also gave Clarence a lot of incentive to continue your education,
Right.
and not to drop out. So I graduated from high school, valedictorian, And
Do you remember what your essay was about?
my essay was a thing about the space program, because at that time they just Russia had just sent up the Sputnik in 1957. I
Okay.
graduated that year, and it was about America getting ahead in the world through education, etc.
Okay.
Remember my commencement speech was centered on that. But in the meantime, I was accepted at Ursinus College. The reason I went to Ursinus College was I was determined to get into medical school.
Your history.
And Ursinus College had the best record of all the colleges around Pennsylvania, that area of Pennsylvania, for getting into medical school. In Ursinus College, if you got through the college, you had virtually 100% chance of
Getting into medical
getting
school.
into medical school.
I see.
And so,
Well, it worked.
because they worked, yeah, because of that. But little did I realize that at Ursinus College, I would have a lot of competition to stay in the program.
Oh, yeah.
And there were 60 of us pre-meders when I was a freshman in college.
Wow.
And only 20 of us out of 60 got through.
How about that?
And all 20 of us got into medical school, but out of those 20, I was the only non-Jewish.
Okay.
All the Jewish were really competitors.
Okay.
And when I got into medical school, out of college, I was accepted into all three medical schools that I applied. I was accepted to Harvard Medical School. Everyone said, you got to go to Harvard, that's the best medical school. And I was accepted to Penn and Jefferson.
Okay.
And I was accepted first at Jefferson, and next at Penn, and last at Harvard. However,
Okay.
At that time, I'd only gotten a scholarship to Jefferson and Penn. Didn't have a scholarship to Harvard. I knew without a scholarship I couldn't go. I probably would have gotten a scholarship to Harvard. So I said, what do I do? So I prayed about it. And I just kind of had in my heart to talk to Daniel Yoder. And so I said, Daniel, I have a problem here. I have to choose between medical schools, and I have a scholarship to Penn, University of Pennsylvania Medical School. I'm accepted to Harvard. I don't have a scholarship. Which would you go to? And he said, definitely go to University of Pennsylvania. He said, I don't like Harvard. Yeah, he had some objection to Harvard. So I went to the University of Pennsylvania. Actually, that was, I think, a leading from God, leading from the Holy Spirit, because between the first and second year in medical school, my dad died very short, without any notice.
Mm-hmm.
And I went into a deep depression the next 6 months. And at the University of Pennsylvania, their policy was, if you're good enough to go to medical school, you're good enough to graduate. And so they did everything they could to graduate you. At Harvard or Jefferson, they may have flunked me out. Because in my depression, I couldn't think, I couldn't remember, I couldn't do anything. And I flunked, my second year I flunked 2 or 3 subjects, which I had to take re-exams on.
Okay.
The thing probably, let me say that of the women in my life, the first major female in my life was Susie Yoder.
Okay.
I was about 16, and soon I got the distinct impression that Susie Yoder was paying attention to me, in fact chasing me. And I kind of liked that. I kind of liked being chased. But the one thing is that Dad and her father didn't get along very well. They were kind of, Dad didn't like Wooly Dave. But anyhow, I went with her on the sly for about 5 years, and then stopped. And then immediately after that, she began to date Roman Yoder and married Roman Yoder, which I think was a good match. When I was in my my second year of medical school, I had this shock of my dad dying like that.
Right.
I couldn't concentrate or anything in my medical studies. So it was December, and in fact in October, it got so bad that I went home. October 23rd, 1963, I went home, told Mom, I said, Mom, I just can't think anymore. I think I'll go in and drop out of medical school. I was home a week. I talked to Jesse Yoder and some other people, and finally I decided to go back.
Oh, that's good.
So I went back to medical school. I lost time there, and but then when I was back in for Christmas vacation, I was at your place,
That's right.
and you said, "Well, you've had so much problems here, you know, and you've been depressed. You know, you should need some cheering up." And she said, Kenny has a school teacher that she is a lot of fun to be with. And I said, "Oh, fun to be with, huh?" So I said, "Show me her picture." So you got out the Greenwood Mennonite
Right.
School yearbook and showed me Kenny's teacher's picture, Carolyn West. And I took one look at that picture, and in my mind I said, "She's not bad looking. She's fun to be with. I think I'll marry her."
Had you seen her then yet?
No, I hadn't seen her at all. And then you and Molly arranged to have me meet her January 19th, 1964 at Uncle Andy's.
Yep, I remember
And
that.
so I was there. And then that night we had our first date. I took her to church, and she had a topic in church,
Oh, yeah.
Greenwood Mennonite Church. She had a topic that night. And so on the way back from church, on the way for me taking her home, I noticed that she sat all the way to the door. And I said, "Oh my, this is going to be a rather platonic relationship." but in a couple of weeks, she warmed up. And so, as the fairy books say, the fairy tales say, they lived happily ever after.
Yeah, that's right.
So now we are 45, almost 45 years married.
Absolutely.
And Irene, you were a part of making one of the best decisions I've made in my life.
Well, I guess it wasn't me. It was just, I was just the one that happened to be there that God could use. So now, out of the marriage, what can you tell us? Yeah, I know you have children.
Oh yeah. Well, we have 4 children and 6 grandchildren.
Okay.
Out of that, and that would be a whole different story.
All right.
This is just to tell me how I got to there.
Got to that point.
And now I'm looking forward to what my older brother and younger brother have to say.
Well, they
So-
should have plenty to say. And they had a few questions here.
Oh, okay.
I'm just going to kind of hand these over. I have a little porter here. Hand these over here to Willie.
Okay.
And you can just read them. Don't read them out loud. And
Where and when did you first kiss Carolyn? Well, it was after a few dates, and Carolyn was a resident. She had rented a room from John Fortune.
That's right.
And so I was saying goodbye to her, and we were rather close, and I was saying goodbye, and before I knew it, actually she kissed me. And then
Okay.
she said, "I'm sorry." And then she kind of thought a little bit, she says, "Kiss me again." Said, "No, I'm not sorry." So that was our first kiss. That was John Schwarzentuber's kitchen. Now for Willie. What was your best date with Susie Yoder? And who was your first girlfriend in high school? Well, actually, while I was in high school, Susie Yoder was my only girlfriend.
Okay.
So, and what was your best date with Susie Yoder? Actually, I never had a date with Susie Yoder. We just kind of snuck out from time to time. And I think the date with Susie Yoder that was the most striking was when Amanda's younger brother, Amanda Byler's younger brother,
Johnny Bontrager.
Johnny Bontrager went and came to our place with Susie Yoder, and so Susie Yoder was sitting in the back seat, so I went and sat in the back seat with her, and 2 of the other young people, boy and girl, were in the front seat. Johnny Bontrager was driving, and Johnny Bontrager went down that Hazelville Road, Dover Hazelville Road, around the corner and he actually went on 2 wheels and almost turned over. And I don't remember anything about that date except that I narrowly escaped death on that date.
Right.
And that may have even made me wonder, is this the girl for me? So, so I answered your question,
Yeah.
John Clarence.
Okay,
So,
very
okay.
good. All right. Well, thank you for a fine interview, Willie.
All right,
Right.
press the record button.